Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time we're back to DS9 Armageddon Game. Armageddon Game. Hey, speaking of Armageddon, you know what? Let's not worry about the end of the world. Let's get out there on Facebook. We're on Facebook. It's all been tricked before. Like I said, spelled just like it sounds. Get out there. Let's have some fun while the world burns. But let's not be negative. But we'll hear how negative we sound about this show. It's Armageddon Game, DS9. It's all been tricked before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your now regular host here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome. Ben sans Keith. Probably sans Keith a lot, unfortunately. But we push on. He wasn't with us at the beginning. It was you and I at the beginning. So
that's true. What it is. This is true.
He'll join us when he can.
Yes.
Lots of love. Lots of love.
Yes. We miss you, Keith.
Oh, absolutely. We are here to talk about the Deep Space Nine episode, Armageddon Game. First impressions.
One of the review sites, it might have been Tor.com, I think, said it was fine, which I thought was accurate. I don't know if I love the episode. I think I like the character developments and those things. I don't even know if they're developments, just further enhancements of the Bashir-O'Brien thing. I definitely think it's Keiko's best episode. It might be Keiko O'Brien's best episode. So I like those aspects. I didn't dislike the episode. I'm not going to lead a parade for it, but I thought after movie stuff, I thought it was going to go one direction, and it ended up going. The twist ended up being different than I expected, but which I actually liked, even though it didn't make it into a great show. But yeah, some good stuff here, some interesting stuff here. Did not hang the moon.
I tend to agree with you. I think character development was good. Story wise was weak. Yeah. And so I think we're getting to the part of DS9 where they start to care about characters more than story. But the story hasn't caught up, and it's going to. It's going to get really solid where they're serving both. When I think about it compared to a Next Gen episode, the Next Gen episode, whether it's good or bad, is more focused on the story than the character development. And this is a turning point for me where I can see the writer of this episode cares more about furthering the Bashir-O'Brien relationship and those relationships. And the Quark had a great scene. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
They care more about that than they do the story of the week. And that is to DS9's advantage overall. But we need both parts of it. And this one didn't deliver on the other part of it.
Yeah.
Yes. We are very close to DS9 really taking off, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I like the groundwork that's laid in this episode that sets it apart from Next Gen.
Yeah.
We start out with Bashir and O'Brien on an alien spaceship destroying genetic weapons. It's never fully explained why they need destroyed like this rather than just tossed into a sun, blown up with nuclear fission.
It reminded me, and I don't really know
later, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the process of disarming an ICBM or whatever, but it made me think of, this was around the time where Soviet Union and the United States were rolling back I guess at this point, Russia, I guess it was Russia by then. The USSR was no longer a thing, but we'd been rolling back supposedly our arsenals. I'm sure they're back up to wherever they were. There's still plenty to kill us all, but it did make me think of that. Like, all right, how do you neutralize plutonium? I don't know, or uranium. I don't know. But they get it done. They're like, oh, that worked. I'm like, this seemed a little too easy. I don't think this is all there is to it.
Well, we were told it actually took a while to get the process right.
Right. Which
we just only saw it at the end.
Right. Which I also appreciated. Like, well, we're on number 262 or whatever it was. Yeah.
But that still doesn't explain why you can't just put it in a pocket on an asteroid and nuke it or throw it into the sun.
That's a good point. Yeah. Cause it's good question.
Why do you need the bath? Why can't you do something more destructive with it?
Yeah. I don't know.
We're introduced to two alien races. I don't know their names. I don't care about their names. I guess they're Talani and Kelleran or whatever. Yeah. They have basically the same ears. They're very similar ears, not the same ears. Yeah. But their hairstyles, man, the hair budget in this episode.
And I discovered this in my research because I had written down fashion notes, great hair, Emmy nominated for hairstyle.
Deservedly so.
Yes, well deserved.
The two very distinct alien hairstyles. They said a lot about the species they were. I know we didn't get into the differences between the two species, and I definitely thought they were like the Vulcan Romulan, that they were once one species and spun off based on the similar ears. Yeah. And the hairstyles are more the difference.
Right.
But I liked it. I think the hairstyles said a lot. I thought they were well thought out. They were well executed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
the Greatest Gen guys did make a point of what happens if you're balding on those planets, and you're just screwed. They discover as they've wiped all the viruses that the data is also being wiped, which makes sense, and then does make sense for what comes after it, that you're wiping the data too. But at the same time, and this is the part at the end that really falls into play. At the end, it's so easily cured. If it's so easily cured, why do you have to wipe everything? Why not just have Bashir give you the cure, and then the weapon's useless? Why do you even have to go through all the rigmarole? If you've got a cure, it's done.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of
It's not quick acting. It takes days to kill you.
I was trying to think of a real world parallel to this. I didn't really come up with one, but they did say that the name of the episode, which I thought was fairly generic,
TOS?
Armageddon Game. Yeah. And
That feels like a TOS title.
Yeah. Well, it was an homage to A Taste of Armageddon, the number 2 episode on IMDb. Hey, I love A Taste of Armageddon, but it's not number 2.
It's not even in the top 10. 20 probably, but not top 10.
Yeah, maybe top 20. But yeah, it was an homage to that, which I appreciated. Which I guess is just them going, in A Taste of Armageddon, they're going overboard with, well, you're dead, but this is how we do this. And
walk into the gas chamber.
Yeah. In this one, they're going a little overboard with we just have to make sure nobody could ever possibly have access to these ever again.
So they destroy the official records. They don't know if somebody didn't smuggle it out.
Right.
Again, having Bashir develop the cure negates it all.
Well, and I thought that was we're going to destroy all these records, so nobody has it except for us. That's what I kept thinking. That's where I kept thinking. So I liked it eventually that the twist was, no, we just don't want anybody. It was even more of a, we really don't trust each other or anybody else. So we're just going to kill everybody. And I thought it was going to be more of a, no, we want to have it, and then we're going to get the other side or whatever. So I
misled us by making the assassins all one species.
Yeah.
Of the two.
Yeah.
Because then you think, oh, we're attacking the other side, but that's not what it was.
Yep. Yeah. But
when we saw the racks of the iris, I was like, oh, it comes in 3 flavors. Because
it looks like Mountain Dew.
You can get strawberry, mango, or lemon.
Yeah. Yep.
O'Brien wants to go home, but Cisco makes him stay for the celebratory party. Yeah, O'Brien wasn't grumpy in Next Gen, was he? That's because of Deep Space Nine. Is it because the station sucks and his marriage is falling apart rather than a character inconsistency?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where everybody treats him like he's the grump. So he's like, well, that's my character. Right. And I don't mean Cole Meany. I mean, O'Brien's like, well, everyone expects me to be grumpy, so fine. This is what you're
Meany does a great grump.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He should have always been the grump.
Well, I think even before that, or maybe it's after that, I love the whole Chip and Dale thing that he and Bashir do.
Yeah,
and I love it. They're like, no, it's so great that you're here. Well, sir, it's so great that you're here. It was great.
So we've got a little hint of their friendship before. We had the episode where they had the athletic competition. Yeah. But I feel like this is the one, Trap Them in the Elevator episode, the old sitcom show, where they actually developed the friendship.
Yeah, this is better than that. Yeah.
Right. And moving forward, I think from here to the end of the series, they're best friends. O'Brien's always going to be a little reticent about it, but they're best friends from here on it. Love the Data and Geordi, but better developed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I like that a lot.
I like that.
They get attacked by the assassins. Bashir does some fun spin moves as he spins around. O'Brien saves his life, and then he gets his rolls in too, because Cole Meany's like, he's not the only one that gets calisthenics. But then the liquid drops on his skin, and this is where I got my alternate episode. It reminded me very much of the spider bite of Peter Parker's Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to know how this was superpowers.
Yeah.
From the liquid drop.
I guess I presume he was, I don't know why I guessed correctly that he was just going to get sick.
Oh, but absolutely. Because of the virus establishment, there was never any doubt on that. But I just thought it would be so much more fun if it went the other way.
Well, and it took me until today to realize the whole theme of this episode is no good deed goes unpunished, because he gets hit with the stuff that they're trying to neutralize, and then they're going to get killed because they know how to neutralize it, essentially.
Right.
Like, they didn't want to come there. They didn't want to know how it works. So
it's not that they know how to neutralize it. It's that they know how to make it.
Yeah.
Because they had to learn that to neutralize it, because just neutralizing it's fine. You're allowed to know that. So then, apparently they're blocked from beaming back to the runabout, but they're not blocked from beaming to the surface. How does that work?
That's a good question. I didn't know that was possible.
Weak story. This was written by Morgan Gendel, who is a male Morgan. He wrote 2 episodes of The Next Generation. He wrote The Inner Light.
Yeah.
And Starship Mine, the Die Hard in Space Picard episode. Also a writer for Law and Order, the original 100, the Dresden Files. I tend to think this was his middling episode. I think The Inner Light was better than this.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, I think the Die Hard one was better than this too.
Was that the Picard Die Hard one?
Die Hard. He also wrote an episode of DS9 season 1 called The Passenger. This is his last Trek credit. The Passenger was the one about the criminal that dies in Bashir's arms, but the captor believes he's still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was better than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cisco, and I thought this all along, and I guess I have to put myself in 1994 or 95, wherever we are here. I think it's 94. He's, when they're like, oh, they explain what happened, and he's like, well, if there are no survivors, how do you know that Chief O'Brien caused the accident? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, this is not believable. I mean, what the heck? And then finally, I'm way ahead. They're like, oh yeah, it was doctored. And I'm like, how would we not know that? But I mean, I'm sure it was being doctored then too, but now
So January. This is the end of January '94, by the way, to answer your previous answer. But yeah, so the thing about blaming it on O'Brien with the technical glitch, what really hit home for that was immediately after that, we have a scene where Bashir and O'Brien are looking at the food packs and stuff, and O'Brien's like, "Be careful, they're booby trapped." O'Brien's the one that says that, and that never comes into play later. But I'm like, you're talking about how he was sloppy, and then immediately supplant that with a scene that's like, no, he's super careful. There.
Oh, right.
I mean, it ends up being the coffee thing. But you also have the thing that O'Brien's working on a Cardassian station that had its share of booby traps and problems that have made him wary of these things. He talks about that, like, fighting in the Cardassian War, which we got a glimpse of in Next Gen, has made him, like, worry about booby traps. So I think all that was really good character development, and it all gelled. I was just like, that's really funny you put those scenes back to back of, he's sloppy. No, he's actually really careful.
So on the Talani food, and maybe we don't want to answer this. We don't want to alienate part of our listening audience, but
let's alienate them. Come on.
They talk about how terrible the Talani food is. So in your world, in our world, in your world, and to your palate, what would be Talani food on Earth?
Did they talk about the Talani? Oh, O'Brien did. You're right. Yeah. He did. He didn't like the food's culture, or the culture's food. I think that is just somebody that's not used to the local cuisine. That's like if you go someplace that has a totally different cuisine, you're like, that's fine, but it's not what I like.
That's a good call. That probably makes more sense. I was going to say German food, but that makes more sense. Because there's a lot of
German food here, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I have German ancestry, at least majorly on one side of my family, and I can tell you it's fine.
I know people love Schmitz. I don't, but hey, I don't begrudge them that. But
Opera House is a good time.
Yeah,
sausages are Spatzel is German mashed potatoes and coleslaw are disgusting. Sauerkraut, disgusting. Not coleslaw. Sauerkraut, German mashed potatoes, disgusting.
I want to like sauerkraut, but I know I don't. So
why would you want to like that?
I don't know, but I was like, it seems like it should be good, and it's like I had it. No, it's not. Yeah, I to your point, because that's where I went first was German food, and then my other thought was there's all these other foods that I haven't tried. Yeah, I feel like I should, not to see if they're terrible, just to see if they're good, because they probably are. Sure. So that's where I ended up going to was, there's a lot of cuisine I'm still ignorant of.
There is
Mexican.
Oh, I love Mexican, but I love the American version of Mexican, right? Like, we don't know what real Mexican is. Yeah, at least I don't. Like, you've been to Mexico. I haven't. So.
I have, and that was not like what I eat here. I enjoyed it very much. It was very good. But yeah, I'm an El Vaquero fan, and that's supposed to be like the mountain kind of cowboy. It's the cowboy, whatever. And but there are other people like, oh no, that's not good, or that's not authentic. I'm like, hey, I don't care. I love it.
I love Mexican, Chinese, and Italian, and I know none of those things here are authentic to those countries.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love the American version of Mexican, Chinese, and Italian.
Exactly.
And I cook it all. I cook all those cuisines. Yeah. But American version, yeah. Although in the Chinese is Chinese immigrants that came over and made that version themselves. So that's a little bit more. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. They talk about Bashir taking extension courses.
I think engineering extension courses.
Yeah. I don't know the last time I heard the term extension courses. I'm sure they still offer them. I don't know if that's what they still call them, but
Bashir's a genius. So he learns a little. We haven't established he's a genius yet, but that's coming. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, because what we've seen of him so far, it makes sense that we find out he's like an actual prodigy genius.
Right.
Which will be the guest star from last week when he comes back in the story in season 6 and 7. That'll play into that story arc.
Oh, okay. And right before the where they're having this conversation, the Chakotea.net folks who do the transcripts, in a well-bombed city is a stout ruin. I like that matte. You know, I love matte, so I thought that was a good matte.
Yeah.
Painting for that.
The acting on the DS9 scenes where they actually believe they're dead was really good acting. I really wish we didn't know they were fine. I mean, I guess they're not fine because O'Brien's dying.
I wrestled with that too. Like, because I ended up going with a different alternate episode, but I thought would the alternate episode be, they're actually dead or whatever. But it was hard for us to feel, because I wrote down at first, like, is Cisco just playing along and he knows something's up? Because I mean, I thought he had more of an inkling, but then it's like, no, he's like, no, he goes and talks to Keiko. And
David Brooks sold it. Rosalind Chow sold it. They all sold it.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is Keiko's best episode to date. Counting next gen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I enjoyed Rosalind Chow and Keiko.
They even went through the tedious stuff of ask Bajor to give us a temporary doctor until we can get a new one, because it's going to take Starfleet time to send it.
That's because even at that point, I thought Cisco, or maybe up until that point, I thought Cisco was like, well, I know better. There's something going on here. I was like, nope.
They talk about, in this episode, he also says they need a new chief of operations. And I bumped on that a little bit because I always think of O'Brien as the chief engineer, because essentially he is. Mm-hmm. But chief of operations is a position that differ. I assume it's the difference between a starbase and a starship, that chief of operations is a little more to do than a chief engineer on a starship, which makes it even more impressive. They grabbed a non-com officer instead of an enlisted person. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't the chief of engineering. He was the chief of operations. And it's interesting DS9 has those differences, because science officer, medical officer, captain, first officer, those are all the same. Mm-hmm. But the chief of operations versus engineer. And the other thing DS9 does differently that we haven't got into yet is Odo is the security chief, but we're going to get a tactical officer later in the series, which is a separate position. And on the Enterprise D, tactical and security are the same position, right?
Yeah.
DS9 is going to have them as separate positions.
Yeah.
And so I guess on a station, you have some different needs and some different arrangements of things. It was the way I read it, but I bumped on the chief of operations because I'm not sure we've heard it said, or if we have, it was in passing and didn't talk about it. The scene where Cisco talks about calling for replacements, I feel like that scene probably actually happens fairly often on DS9 and other Star Trek shows. We just don't see it very often. Mm-hmm. Like, if it's a junior officer, you're still, especially because Starfleet only has like 30 officers on the station. Most of the station's crew is Bajoran. They just have Starfleet leadership. That's got to happen fairly often. Like, even if the assistant security officer dies, we got to have that conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe the whole senior staff doesn't feel bad, but all these security officers feel bad, or all the engineers feel bad.
Yeah.
Just because you're married doesn't mean you stop looking. That O'Brien line. I mean, he's correct. But I also could see that falling like a lead balloon when it airs. And
I thought back and I was like, I remember not only saying that, but hearing that a million times back then.
Don't let your wife catch you as the part that rubbed me the wrong way, because I know plenty of couples that are like, nah, feel free to look. I'm not jealous. Like,
yeah,
you can.
It was trying to think of the stupid lines. Just because I'm on a diet, just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean I can't look at the menu. That's
But I'm saying you don't. The fact that they portrayed this as O'Brien's allowed to look, but he can't tell Keiko. That's what bothered me.
Yeah,
like he's allowed to look and Keiko's okay with it. Would make more sense.
Yeah, well, I wrote when Bashir started kind of zeroing in, I'm like, oh, he knows Keiko O'Brien. He knows these guys. He knows. I mean, everybody seems to.
Keiko likes Bashir more than Miles does. Did you get that impression? Like, Keiko's rooting for that friendship. And how much of that is because she likes Bashir, and how much of that is because she wants her husband out of her hair every once in a while?
That's too.
So she doesn't have to go to Earth all the time for her grandmother's 100th.
Who is it? I'm trying to think. Is it Bashir who mentions the wife and kids at home? Is that what comes up?
Bashir talks about how it's not fair to basically have a spouse and kids when you're in Starfleet because of the danger of the job.
Yeah.
Which I kind of get that in Kirk's time. That makes sense.
Yeah.
In this time, when you bring your family to the Enterprise D in the spaceship, I understand that the Enterprise D is unique. That the Galaxy class has room for families. Most of the lesser classes do not. Deep Space Nine has room for families too, though. So it feels really weird and tone deaf that when your last series and this series both take place in a setting where you can bring your spouse and children, that you're arguing that. Whereas that argument would have landed a lot better in the original series. Or even Voyager, because Voyager's a smaller ship, so it doesn't have room for families.
Yeah, and it definitely plants itself in 1994 because, worrying about the wife and kids at home, like the kids, sure, but.
Well, first of all, I'm calling it a wife instead of a spouse is a problem.
Yeah, that too, yeah. So,
I think, and I wish what this episode had made mention of, this also really bumped for me, is Keiko was a botanist on the Enterprise D before they got married. She wasn't on the Enterprise D because she was a spouse. She had a job. And it sucks that when they got to DS9, she had to create a new job for herself as a teacher, that they did not have room for her to be her own professional self.
And I actually thought that whole conversation, and they visited a couple times, was like the most mature conversation they've had about it, because it's like, because I started thinking about, my first wife lived in a different city at times from me, because, and I was like, actually, I'm thinking of a different show as well. Sex Education on Netflix had a similar conversation, one of the latest episodes. But yeah, it's a difficult thing. You don't want to hold your partner back, but you also want to be with them. That's the whole idea, and it's a tricky thing.
Given the state of DS9 when they took over, I get why they didn't have space for a botanist at that point. Right. But I feel like it would have been a better plot of her making room for a botanist than it would be for her going to be the teacher.
Yeah, and I think this is the most, because I think before it felt like a teenager thing. Well, I'm doing this, so why don't you do this? And this felt more mature. Like there's levels here. It's a little more nuanced. And again, that's one of the things I felt like the characters were developed here, even if the story itself was awesome.
Bashir was right in calling it out as a stressor in O'Brien's marriage.
Yes,
but it bothers me the way it's portrayed. I think a lot of that's that Rosalind Chow turned down the offer to be a series regular. I really missed that here because again, if she was developed as a character, you don't have the same spouse argument.
Yep.
The novelization of the pilot established that Keiko encouraged him to take the position. And because that didn't make it on screen, that gave them the freedom here to say it's a stressor. I think it could still be a stressor in their marriage, even if she encouraged him. Yeah. And then she gets there and it's not what she expected.
Mm-hmm.
But we lack the nuance because Keiko's not a lead. That if Keiko was a lead, we would have the space for the nuance.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because this is the first time we get to hear nuance, for lack of a better term. Yeah, that's a very good point.
And I love Rosalind Chow. I really wish she had turned down the part.
Especially if every episode was like this. God, I want to see more of these guys.
It's hard to imagine DS9 making room for her. I mean, she would have been like a Quark or an Odo, that their stories come in, but they're kind of separate, but they're kind of developed. Or a Jake Sisko.
Sure.
It would have fleshed out the station a slightly more, but it would have made less Starfleet stories. But I think we would have been okay with losing a couple of those Starfleet stories to make room for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that what could have been. It's a little bit sad there. Cisco goes to tell Keiko what happened, and maybe this is a Keiko O'Brien trait, but it was weird to me that we didn't see her sadness. It was just like, tell me what happened. Oh, there's a tape. I want to see the tape. And I'm like, okay, I get why you'd eventually want to see the tape, but that's your first reaction. And it seemed like Cisco was encouraging that because she asks what happened. And instead of telling her, he says, well, there's a tape. It's like, oh, he's trying to push her to look at the tape instead of talking to him about it. And I didn't like that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because my alternate episode is essentially, I call it a KFK, Keiko FK. Because she kind of is like, goes into the conspiracy kind of thing. Like, there's more here. I'm getting into this. And she trolls it or whatever. And so
it doesn't, but we think she did.
Well, right. But she at least is like, well, there's something not right here, which I'm like, thank God somebody actually looked and paid attention. But it leads to a fantastic low line.
Shouldn't we have had her grieving and then in her grief eventually deciding to look rather than she's saying what happened and Cisco just gives her the tape? Like, oh, you want to know what happened? Here you go. Watch the tape. I'm not going to tell you.
I think if you play it that she's in denial, then you've got some heavy drama there. Like, she's not accepting this. That is not the way it was played, though.
Or, again, if you developed her as a character.
Yep. Yeah.
It could have worked better.
Yeah. Yeah. If she's like, oh, I know my husband, that's not what happened. And that's actually kind of the joke at the end of the episode, too.
Or we developed her as naturally skeptical.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So they do sprinkle it into this episode, which makes sense to where we get going. But yeah.
It's not enough. It's not enough. It's a real shame.
It does make that scene weird.
Yeah,
it does.
Before I forget, I just want to mention this was directed by one of our regulars, Winrich Colby. Nothing like mentioning about the direction, but we go to a scene of Dax and Kira in Quark's bar, and Bashir has given Dax his diaries, but she hasn't read them yet, which I loved that because it's like, oh, he's trying to desperately to reach out. She's still kind of rejecting him. That all fit. But then we surprisingly, almost out of nowhere, get this touching scene of Quark giving them a free toast. And I know he couches it in the rule of acquisition, the 57th or whatever, of good customers are as rare as Latinum. You have to honor them. That still doesn't explain why he would give Dex and Kira a free drink. And I like his line of, I can be thoughtful, because I like that they did not take him out of character to make him thoughtful, but I like that we had this moment of him that was unexpected and also felt great.
I thought it was funny, it was touching, and I wrote he could be, at least a couple of my favorite bartenders. They could have been them speaking at my funeral. He was a good customer, always made his bill on time. So
it was extraneous to the episode, but as a character development moment from Quark, it was Chef's kiss.
Again, because
it was cherry on top.
Yep, we didn't get a lot of Quark this episode, but we just got just the right amount to advance some things. Yeah,
it was indispensable for the development of him, even if it did not matter to the rest of the hour.
Yeah. So I loved it.
So Keiko, as you hinted at, she has this mystery of, well, Miles never drinks coffee late in the day. Something must be screwed up, which kicks off the whole investigation. I'm going to jump to the end real quick because I feel like we need to at this point. Where there's that whole laugh line of Miles does drink coffee in the afternoon. Of course he does. Were you glad that was a laugh line, or did that kind of like, why did you ruin the mystery? Why did you make the story less coherent to have a laugh?
It made me laugh. Yeah, it made me laugh.
It's not natural for a marriage that she is so certain, but she's wrong.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, and it also goes to, these guys don't know each other at all. And all that stuff. So
that unravels the mystery and makes that a coincidence instead of an actual.
Right. Well, I think that points to like, they got lucky to figure this out. That shouldn't have been what happened. I think that goes to, something you've talked about, which is like the Deep Space Nine world is not, that Federation does not have their stuff together necessarily, This
Neither
part of
does
the galaxy.
Next Gen, we just don't see home base that much.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're going to get to that more in DS9. We're going to get to that more in Star Trek Picard, that Starfleet is not together as they pretend.
Yeah.
And the original series movies justify that they've never been together. Think about Star Trek 6.
Oh, yeah.
Like that lays the groundwork.
Yeah.
Of, we can't trust the Admiral.
And to go back to last week when we did the Star Wars segment, it's that same thing of I think that's one of the things about TNG for some folks, and that's why they got Roddenberry out. You know, remember he's like, I don't want any conflict. It's like, all right, well, what are we gonna do? It makes it a little too clean, even though there are some. But they finally had some episodes where they weren't as clean. You know, it wasn't as we're the good guys, they're the bad guys kind of a thing or whatever. Or this world, this is how this universe works. So, but yeah, I laughed out loud. I thought it was perfect, Cake O'Brien, and it's perfect delivery by Rosalind Chow. So funny.
She's great. I want more of her.
Yeah.
It hurts my heart how little we get of her in DS9, especially knowing that she was offered a series lead role.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get where she was coming from, but
yeah, I get because of the 90s. If she was offered that today, I don't think she turns it down. I think it's a different story.
Yo, for sure. Yeah. 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 At that point, somebody she probably talking to Michelle Nichols and she was like, I don't know. That would be the way to go. If you have some other stuff going on, if you got some heat some other places.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like we said, she did 19 episodes of DS9. She did 3 in season 1 that we already saw.
Mm-hmm.
And this is her 4th of 6 in season 2.
Okay.
But season 2 is the most we ever get of her. The rest of the series, we get between 1 and 3 episodes a season.
Yeah.
So season 2, and we've already gotten more of her this season than we will get of her in any other season. And we still have 2 more to go.
Yeah. I would have liked,
a bummer.
Like I said, my alternate episode is more Keiko.
I mean, 2 in season 3, 3 in season 4, 3 in season 5, only 1 in season 6 at the very end. That is a very O'Brien focused episode. And then season 7, the final season, she's only in the series finale. And they're not giving her lots of focus in the series finale, but she's there. But she had to be. Bashir talks about his love of Ballerina. And then he chose Starfleet over her. It's really interesting backstory on Bashir. I really wish that was setting the stage to be followed up upon a later episode, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure we never follow up on the Ballerina.
Yeah, I wanted to get.
I feel like that was the type of thing you thread in so that 10 episodes from now you bring in the Ballerina, but
or something. Yeah. Well, because it part of it made me think: is he just making her up? Whatever he's describing, sure there's a person, but it feels like he's just making them up. So.
I wondered the same thing, but I don't think so. I think he was 100% legit.
Yeah.
O'Brien tells him that marriage is the greatest adventure of them all.
Yeah,
and he's not wrong.
I enjoyed that actually. I thought it was O'Brien's defense of marriage versus Bashir doesn't really give much of an argument, but it's one of my favorite arguments against marriage that's done is Up in the Air, George Clooney's argument, which gets undermined later in the movie beautifully, almost along these same lines. Actually, very much along these same lines. So I wish they'd given them a couple more minutes of that back and forth.
Yeah.
Although, Clooney, or even that movie, is a more experienced guy, whereas Bashir still seems like a horn dog that just got out of college, which doesn't necessarily discount what he's saying. Like, wow, it doesn't make sense. Because, it points to, we all know Cake O'Brien isn't doing awesome, but sometimes that's what happens in marriages, and you work through it, or you don't, I guess.
But as much as he's a horn dog, he's also lusted after Dax for 2 seasons. Yeah. And if you're somebody that's trying to get over a love, and then also if he's somewhat on the fence of regretting leaving this love, and then having let me replace her with somebody else that doesn't have the same conflicts, it actually flicks in a couple of things in Bashir's backstory.
Yeah.
5 seconds were erased from the Ganges, as Cisco and Dex will find out. I appreciate that they were that thorough to remove them trying to contact the runabout to beam off. Although, did their message really get through? Because I thought it was blocked, but whatever.
Right.
The assassination was T-Race knowledge, which makes more sense in the context of we're going to delete the files, we're going to delete everything. Of course, they got to get rid of that. But then my question is, why did you only have one species involved in the assassination? That feels like it was purely to mislead the audience rather than for any logical means, especially because the kill squad later in the episode consists of both species. So that was audience misdirection rather than story sense.
Yes.
What they could have done to make that better without screwing up the whole episode was have the door open, have one guy from one species with a phaser rifle and cut away before he kills everyone.
Yeah.
First of all, that leaves you up in the air when you first hear they're dead. Makes that a little more believable. Second of all, does not negate the mystery later. of both ambassadors being involved.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ambassadors real quick. Ambassador Ichira was played by Darlene Carr. She's best known for voicing the Jungle Book. She voiced the girl in that original Disney animated movie of 1967. She voiced the girl and Mowgli fell in love with.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
She's also best known for The Beguiled, 2 episodes of Magnum P.I., and 12 episodes of The Streets of San Francisco.
Huh.
According to IMDb, it doesn't look like she's passed away, but she has no credits after 1999.
Oh, wow. She looked very familiar.
She did a lot of animation. This is her only Trek credit, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, she did look familiar. But yeah, it looks like she has some guest spots, but mostly animation voice work, especially in later years. And then the other ambassador, the Mohawk guy, Ambassador Sharat, was played by Peter White, who's best known for the movie Dave, where he played the Secretary of Commerce.
Yeah.
13 Days, Armageddon, where he played the Secretary of Defense, because he's been to cabinet multiple times. And then this one episode of Star Trek.
I recognize him from his TV guest spots. He did a lot of 70s and 80s, and probably obviously 90s. He's doing.
Oh, yeah. He did 2 episodes of The West Wing in season 2.
Yeah.
He also does not have a death date on IMDb, so he may still be around, but his credits end. He's got 1 credit in 2016. Before that, they really end in 2008.
He was also in Boys in the Band. He was in the Broadway show, and then he did the movie. I read about this, and that's a like landmark gay film, one of the very early ones. And he wasn't going to do it, and his mentor was like, well, I got the heat on me or whatever, and they're like, you're an actor, you need to take risks. And so he did, and yeah, like I said, the landmark film, and he had a pretty good career.
While we're talking guest stars, I do want to mention Dr. Nydrum was played by Larry Cedar, who has one other Trek credit as an episode of Enterprise.
Yeah.
And an episode of Voyager. Sorry, he's got 2 other Trek credits. But he's best known for Deadwood. He did 24 episodes. Community, where he did 2 episodes. Episode of American Horror Story.
He was
5 episodes of Law and Order True Crime.
He was Cornelius Hawthorne on Community. He was Pierce's dad.
Correct.
And then he also, to go back to one of our special episodes, he's the creature on the wing in the Twilight Zone movie.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, he looked really familiar. He looked like one of those guys. And then as I went through, I'm like, yep, that all makes sense.
Yeah, he just did not a whole lot of credits, but a couple worth mentioning.
Yeah.
And then the last guest star of note on IMDb is Jakin, played by Bill Mundy. He's best known for Chaos, The Crow of Salvation, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Miracle. 92 credits. Not as recognizable to me. I'm not even sure what character that was in the episode, but this is his only Trek credit. And one of his very first credits. He has 100 IMDb credits, but this was his 4th.
Wow.
So he was just getting started. Looks like he is still alive and active. Did not make it to Seinfeld because he was just getting started. Well, that's all I have for guest star credits.
Yeah, that was Larry Cedar was the big one for me.
Why did the assassins, when they came for Bashir and O'Brien in their hideaway, even take the time to tell them what's going on? I guess it's compassion, but it felt really weird. I figured they just shoot him.
That's where I was. I was like, why aren't you guys dead yet? Why?
Even gave O'Brien time to get on his feet, which I'm sorry, but that's toxic masculinity to me, that you need to stand up to be dead. I know it was supposed to be respect and duty, but it felt like masculine posturing.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Die on your feet? Because you're not going to die on your feet. You're going to be off your feet. But
they did have it did give O'Brien the chance to say the line that was honors to serve Bashir.
Yeah,
will come to bite him in the butt for the next 6 seasons.
Ha!
And Bashir's like, oh, you do like me. We're best friends next. I liked the running with the runabouts, but first they sacrificed the runabout, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But they talked about how the sensors weren't working and things weren't working, but they still managed to beam from one to the other. And how did they remotely control the runabout if communications were down and they couldn't send communications to the runabout? It just didn't. It felt like it didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. It didn't.
And then my last note is I liked the awkwardness of Bashir and O'Brien in Sick Bay at the End, or whatever it's called on DS9, and Keiko teasing them of, you guys should be best friends.
Yeah.
It was cute.
I enjoyed it a lot. I have a few notes going back. This is this week's other Star Wars thing. Bashir, of all people, says, I'm sorry, it's just all standing around, which is a Han Solo line from Star Wars: The Motion Picture, where he says, yeah, I'd rather take on the whole, I was like, what do you want to take on the whole space station? Yeah, it's better than sitting around. So it's just a little hint towards that. Speaking of referencing other movies, at one point, O'Brien says, "My legs, I can't feel them," which made me think of the final speech in First Blood, the first Rambo movie, where he's talking about his buddy whose legs get blown off. He's like, "I can't find your legs," but also made me think of Tropic Thunder, which has that first scene where not Tom Cruise, Ben Stiller's character said, "I can't feel my leg." So that's a classic. Speaking of tropes, war tropes. I liked when one of the ambassadors says to Cisco, "That piece cannot survive unless both sides trust each other." And Cisco gives some really great eyebrow acting. Like, I don't buy any of that. At this point, I'm like, okay, Cisco's back in. He's not buying any of this stuff.
Once things started to unravel, Cisco was...
Yeah. Avery Brooks giving great eyebrow, like, not buying this. And then
he's my favorite captain, but he has not earned that yet. He will.
Sure. But I did enjoy that. And then, this is just about the Chileans and the Calerians. Don't they have to kill themselves then after they kill these guys? Because don't they have knowledge about the harvesters?
That's a good point. Like, I guess the two ambassadors could survive, but their whole staff? But then the ambassadors have to do a poison toast together, right?
Right. It's a bloodbath. Yeah, it's a murder-suicide.
Or maybe they don't actually have the knowledge. They kept that, like, wall, Chinese wall or whatever they call it like a Chinese wall, right?
Yeah, in law firms. Yeah, yep.
They kept the wall that they know these people have the knowledge, but they don't actually possess the knowledge themselves.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That is all my notes, other than I called the episode Space Battles, which, again, I'm referencing the Star Wars Minute guys, but they talked about if Star Wars had been called Space Battles. They're like, that seems really generic, and I just remembered having a toy called Space Battles that was definitely a Star Wars toy, but they couldn't call it Star Wars. Anyway, I just broke that down as another name for the episode. What? But they were homaging Taste of Armageddon, so forgiven. So yeah.
Very shady characters this week.
The Chileans and the Carrie.
The whole species?
Yeah. Or, well, I guess.
Or the ambassadors.
Atishra and who was the other guy? Not Sherrod, yeah, those two. Yep.
Yeah, I just put the ambassadors. I guess I gave it away by saying, "Who are your shitty characters?"
No, they were.
They equally deserve it. Who is your annoyance?
Same group. Yeah.
I mean, I do hate to say it, and this is the second episode in a row, third already this season, but it's Bashir. I'm sorry. I know. I feel I get a more well-rounded character of him. He is much better than Bashir of season 1, and yet he is just so freaking annoying. I get fair. O'Brien's grumpiness.
He definitely has some annoying moments in this episode. Not cringy like in season 1, but still annoying. Right,
different type.
Well, because I think O'Brien even says, "Will you shut up?" I think, or something like that.
I can relate to O'Brien that if like this is the guy that's your rank that wants to hang out with you, I could see myself becoming friends with Bashir, but reluctantly, because it's like, really? Is there somebody else I can be friends with? Because he's a lot. He is a
lot. Yeah, that's a very good breakdown.
Who are you having a drink with?
Keiko. She was so delightful in this episode.
She was great. I don't drink coffee, but I am having a coffee in the afternoon with O'Brien for obvious reasons.
That's good.
I'm probably going to drink hot chocolate or something, but
that's what I would do. Yeah.
Ranking the episode, I'm not even sure where to start here.
Yeah.
Let's just go with the most recent DS9 as a starting point. The alternate. That is, they discover the life form similar to Odo on the thing that the gas infects him and all that.
Yeah.
I'm going down.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go
below that's Cardassians, where we had the Cardassian war orphan that was adopted by the Bajorans, and we got to go below that.
Yeah, I agree.
Below that's the Circle, which was the middle of the 3-parter that opened the season.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I keep going.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't really sure where to start, but I definitely think I started too high. Below that's Invasive Procedures. That's the Trill that steals Dax's symbiote. Still below.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. We're getting into the ballpark.
Below that's Rules of Acquisition, Ferengi episode. We got to go below that. Below that is Sanctuary. That is the race that has been conquered by the Dominion comes to the station seeking a new home, the refugees. And Kira tries to find their fabled homeworld, and they really dig in that Bajor is their fabled homeworld. Now I think we're at the right stunts.
Yeah.
Those other ones were practice.
Yeah. This is definitely recency bias. I would go above, but I feel it's very much recency bias.
Yeah, I don't love that episode, but the character stuff in this one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you. Let's go above Sanctuary.
That was an interesting episode, though.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Puts us 5 from the bottom. Okay. I think that's this has been a great season. This is 9 of 13. This season's been pretty strong. I think that's a good spot for it.
Mm-hmm.
So next week we talked about how Sub Rosa was one of the worst regarded episodes of Next Gen. Next week we have the episode Lower Decks, which is actually a highly regarded episode of Next Gen. Maybe we'll actually get a bright spot in the final season. I know the final season's been kind of disappointing so far.
Yeah.
But in this one, a mission of the Enterprise is seen through the eyes of junior officers who are up for promotions as questions of duty and honor arise among them. Some of them, such as the Bajoran whom Worf designated to be promoted to operations. Until then, live long!
And don't help anybody. No good deed goes unpunished. And prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?